For a few years now, there has been a sentiment among a certain group of people online that the Nintendo Switch is a port machine. While that is ludicrous considering the sheer number of original games Nintendo has made this generation, it's also not without some merit. The overwhelming success of the Switch, which is on track to become the highest selling console of all time, has allowed Nintendo to breathe new life into older and more overlooked games. One such gem is Luigi's Mansion 2, which was originally released in the US as Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon on the 3DS. Brought into our lives during the magnificent Year of Luigi in 2013, Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon was the long-awaited continuation of the Luigi's Mansion series that many had thought was on ice. Originally a GameCube launch title, and technically the first title to star Mario's younger brother, we don't talk about Mario's missing. Luigi's Mansion was a bit underbaked, but had a ton of charm and was an absolute showstopper in terms of graphical detail in 2001. The 3DS sequel didn't quite live up to that standard, but did expand things with new gameplay mechanics and a fun multiplayer mode. Luigi's Mansion 2 HD is pretty much the same game as that. There are some changes, which I'll talk about, but if you've already played the original and didn't care for it, nothing here will sway your opinion. On the other hand, newcomers will likely be surprised by what developer Next Level Games was able to accomplish with such limited hardware all those years ago. The plot for Luigi's Mansion 2 is as straightforward as can be. Luigi is resting in his home when he gets a call from Professor Egad about some strange paranormal activity going on. The previously titular Dark Moon has been shattered into pieces and has sent Egad's ghost into a frenzy. Unsure of how this all commenced, Egad summons Luigi to explore a new set of mansions to retrieve the Dark Moon crystals and restore order to his laboratory. Along the way, Luigi will uncover a familiar foe and help save someone close to him. This is all the same as it was in the 3DS version, and there hasn't been anything done to the cutscenes to expand them or even reframe them. I was never displeased with the plot in this game, but for a full-priced remake releasing on Switch, Luigi's Mansion 2 HD does feel a little undercooked. Developer Tantalus has done a solid job translating the low-resolution original to full HD, but you can't help but feel if this game could have maybe done with a lower price tag or even some new content. That said, the campaign in Luigi's Mansion 2 is still very solid. While the sequel doesn't have the dark atmosphere and spooky thrills of the original, it makes up for it with a wildly colorful art style and varied scenarios. If you've only played Luigi's Mansion 3, you will likely be excited to see where developer Next Level Games planted the seeds for greatness with its differing mansions, variety of ghosts, and broader boss design. That last aspect is one of the weaker elements, however. Luigi's Mansion had some pretty lackluster boss fights, but Luigi's Mansion 2 starts with an absolute banger and then kinda gives up the ghost, pun intended. The first boss sees you working around the environment to light a giant spider on fire, but every other boss is simply a variation of waiting until you can attack and then pelting them with damage. The boss of the third mansion is a particular low point, but even the climactic finale feels like a warm-up for a real boss instead of an endgame challenge. It's just a bit too rote. The same goes for the mission structure, which was limited by the portability of the 3DS. When Nintendo had split development for home consoles and its handheld devices, games on its portables would often feature shorter levels with broken up objectives. Luigi's Mansion 2 is just like that, having a distinct set of missions available in each mansion that range from anywhere of 5 to 25 minutes in length. It makes sense when you consider the battery life of the 3DS, but it does feel a bit truncated after seeing how far Next Level Games was able to take this concept with Luigi's Mansion 3. Even still, the majority of these levels are a delight to explore and feature all of the same environmental details as the original game. Despite being an HD port, the visuals are not on the same level as the GameCube Classic, but they occasionally look fantastic. Reflections are a big highlight, and the lighting effects are pretty awesome to behold. It's truly the lack of dust detail and sometimes plasticky appearance of surfaces that reminds you this was a portable game. As for changes to this version, obviously the visuals have been tweaked, but the biggest addition is with regards to controls. Since the Switch Joy-Con have access to a right analog stick, Tantalus implemented the ability to aim Luigi's vacuum independently of his movement. It does help a little when trying to strobe ghosts above you, but the game was made in such a manner that this rarely comes up. It is nice to have, though not a massive difference. The map screen is maybe the one drawback, as you can likely expect from a 3DS to Switch port. Since there aren't two screens, you have to pause the game to get a closer look at your map. A mini-map does accompany you, but it's a bit too small to be really useful. Pausing the game can sometimes cause the music to glitch out, restarting tunes or looping them from previous rooms. Again, not a deal breaker, but that is still some kind of a change. A lot of my criticisms are going to come off as nitpicks, because that's truly what they are. There isn't anything really wrong with Luigi's Mansion 2 other than some pacing issues. I did start to tire of the start and stop nature of its missions by the end, but this is all stuff I complained about 11 years ago. Really, the only thing that makes me look back in a not so bright of light is that Luigi's Mansion 3 is truly outstanding. Next Level Games took all of the lessons it learned here and pushed them to the limit in that sequel. To this day, that game still looks like a CG movie, and it has so much variety and style that I really just want to boot it up again. At least in terms of what Luigi's Mansion 2 HD has that Luigi's Mansion 3 can't offer, is its unique version of the Scarescraper multiplayer mode. Sort of a timed horde mode or enemy rush challenge, up to 4 players can team up online or offline to tackle 5, 10, or an endless number of floors to put their skills to the test. Scarescraper does return in 3, and there's even a competitive mode in that game, but the version in Luigi's Mansion 2 has a simplistic charm that I find captivating. It doesn't hurt that you can no longer play the 3DS version online, so this is your only option for re-experiencing the thrills and chills. If you don't intend on playing online, however, the price tag is really going to dissuade you from buying Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. I think that's the biggest factor working against this particular release. I'm fond of this sequel, and sort of prefer it to the original, but I'm baffled why Nintendo didn't include the 3DS remake of the original Luigi's Mansion alongside this. I don't need shoehorned co-op in here, but $60 for what almost amounts to a straight port is a hard pill to swallow. Then again, Nintendo has done this with other Switch remakes, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Ultimately, Luigi's Mansion 2 is still a very good game, and something I recommend getting if you can find it on sale. It has a lot of charm, some creative elements, and a ton of puzzle-solving goodness. It's just a shame that Nintendo couldn't have added something new, or even included the original game in addition to this.